What's up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. This is going to be phase 2 of the OBS system install. So we're going to try to knock out the kick panel speakers and get the amp wiring and the amp installed, and then we can really try this out and see how it sounds. Let's get started. All right, so if you guys don't know, these are Q-Logic branded panels. Q-Logic's been in the game for a long time. I remember back in the late 90s, they had Q-Logic sub boxes that were innovative at the time. They fit in spaces in vehicles that you didn't think you could fit a sub, and they really helped add good low-end bass to vehicles that really didn't have the space for it. So these should be good quality. The only downside I see so far is there's no tabs on the back that are supposed to snap in under there. But there is a hole right here, which I'm assuming you're supposed to put some type of a fastener through there to hold it down. So we'll see. I know it's going to fit under the dash here and lock in pretty good. So we'll see how that goes. And we also have the passive crossovers here that go along with it. So these take the signal from the radio and split it out to lower frequencies and higher frequencies and send that to the mid and the tweeter. So that's what these are. And just as a refresher, this is a set from Kicker. It's a mid-level set. They're not super high-end, but they're not super cheap either. 100 watts RMS. And right now I plan on running them just straight off the radio. I do have an aftermarket radio, which I think is about 55 watts a channel. So if this set, all 4 speakers at 100 watt RMS, we should be good. If I need to add an amp later, it wouldn't be that hard. But that's the plan right now. And once we get in there and start looking at the wiring on the radio, I'll explain to you how I'm going to rewire it to run these just by themselves on 2 channels, and then the other 4 factory speakers on the other 2 channels. So these trucks come factory with 4x6 speakers here in the dash. And then in the back, behind the seat here, in this little thing, right there. And I've already replaced these recently. I replaced these with 4.5-inch Kicker coaxial speakers. So they've got the little mini mid and then a tweeter in the middle. And they make sound. They do, but it's not very good. There's no low end at all. There's not very much mid at all. You just can't get anything out of a 4.5-inch speaker and a tweeter. There's just nothing there. So that's what we're working on. But I don't want to lose the sound fill like from behind you and in front of you and disconnect any of these speakers. So we're going to rewire the radio and see how it works running the 4 factory speakers off the back 2 channels, what runs the speakers that are normally behind your head. All 4 speakers are going to run off the back, and then the 2 in the kick panels that we're installing are going to run off the front 2 channels. That way I'll be able to fade in and out, use the fader front to back, and add more or less volume to the kick panels or the surround speakers to balance out the sound, at least I hope. If that doesn't work, it will not be hard to rewire those back to their normal configuration and then add a small amp to push the kick panel speakers. So we're going to see how it goes. If I have to redo it, a little 100 watt or 200 watt amps, not that expensive. It's probably about $100. So I'll already have the wiring in place. I'll just have to split it off with a distribution block and add another amp. It wouldn't be hard at all. So let's get started. First things first on this, I'm going to go ahead and pull the factory kick panels out. So you're going to have to remove the screw here. You don't have to take this whole seal out, but I would remove the first one and the second one, and then give you enough space to pull that up and get this out from underneath it. And then, like I said earlier, there's some clips under here that just snap into the side to the metal, and you just kind of pull those out, and then it runs up, tucks in under the dash right there. The instructions state that you're going to have to manipulate this emergency brake pedal, bend it over like 1.5 inches to keep it from contacting the kick panel whenever you push it down. I don't use the emergency brake much, but I'll look into that after I get everything installed and see how it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and get these removed on both sides. And I have some left over. I still have some of the Dynamat that we used in the last video. I'm going to go ahead and line the area behind this, and then probably line the actual panels themselves, because they're not super rigid and I don't want a lot of reverb and rattling. So let's get started. All right, kick panels have been pulled out. I did a little vacuuming, so this is what it looks like underneath. So this is the metal part that I'm going to put some Dynamat on and try to deaden a little bit. Same with the other side over there. I'm going to have to kind of remember the other tests I have involved, because there's signal wires and power wires and everything that need to run in this same area, so I don't have to redo this stuff. So while I have the radio out rewiring it, I may go ahead and run the RCAs and the remote wires, and then all that will be left is running the power. So these are the factory panels. You can see how well they line up with the aftermarket panels. They look pretty dead on. These do have some deadening on the back of them. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Dynamat stuff on the back of these. What little space there is to kind of deaden those. No reverb. Same with this side over here. So I'm going to get working on that. It shouldn't take long. Get that knocked out, and then we'll see what they look like. All right, this is kind of what I come up with. I'm no professional, but I covered the bigger spots, the parts that could have some resonance to them. There we go. And then also down here, got a big panel tucked in under there, and then one on that side covering up the top part that had the resonance to it. So I'm going to test fit these panels now, see how they look. From the reviews and stuff, it said you got to do a little bit of massaging to get them in the right spot. So we're going to look at that and see how it goes. I also need to figure out where to mount these, somewhere under the dash where the wires reach. Preferably closer to the radio, because I don't want to have to splice these. And there's a lot of run here, so I'll put them like behind the center console and behind the column to make sure that they reach the radio in the middle. So I'm going to have a look at that. That's the next step, and then we move forward. All right, so here's what I come up with. I mounted one right here using some double-sided foam tape. The wires are super long enough to be able to reach the radio and be able to reach the speakers. Fairly easy to get to. There is a little, like a switch on the side of it. I'm not really sure what it does, but all I have to do is pull this glove box liner out, and I can get to it if I do need to change it. And then I'll show you the other side. The other side over here is a little different. It's a little tighter, so I've got it mounted to that support bar there with some zip ties. And again, the wire's long enough to reach, and then it's cycled over and hanging out right here. I'm going to go ahead and get the driver's side installed, because there's no extra wires to run on that side, so we can get a look at what it looks like, how the fit and finish is. The other side is going to be where the power and the RCAs and the remote and everything are running, so that one's going to take a little more time. But I'm going to get this side knocked out first, get everything wired up, and have a look at how it fits. All right, so I got the driver's side in here, trying to get some light in here so you guys can see. Looks pretty good, matches pretty well. It's not quite the same color, but it's pretty close. Most of the pieces in this truck aren't quite the same color, you know, so I mean, it works. I did have to disconnect the zip ties on the box because the wire wasn't quite long enough. The contacts on this speaker, when I installed it, I wanted the words on the cone to be upright. Doesn't really matter because you can't see them because they're behind the cover. But that put the terminals on the bottom, and the wire just wasn't long enough to reach. So this did take some physical manipulation. Kind of had to pound it into place. It fits up underneath this lip here with just friction. and then you just kind of hit it this way to drive it in to get it against the wall. And then hold it down with this. There's really nothing else that holds it in place. So I'm hoping it stays. I'm hoping the door doesn't hit it. So, but get some of this stuff out of the way. Check our footwell clearance here. Make sure, yeah, everything's good down there. Got room for my feet without kicking the speakers. They are tucked in under the dash quite a ways. And that speaker's pointed directly at the... I did bend this over just with my hand. So I may bend it and then bend it again to get it straight again. But right now it doesn't hit, but just barely. So I still got to wire up the drop on this side and then start working on the other side. But that one's in, and that's what they look like. So far, so good. Went ahead and ran the remote and signal wire under here real quick, basically following the same path I did with those speaker wires. Give it a little zip tie action there to hold it down, and myself enough slack over here to do what I need to do. So that means I can go ahead and close up the glove box area. I think I'm done back there. So we'll get that snapped back or bolted back in and closed up and get this out of my way, and then we'll work on routing those wires. And I have no idea how to get the hot wire through the firewall or wherever it needs to go. I don't remember where I ran it on my truck back in the day. I want to say there was a grommet on one side that I just kind of reused, but I don't remember. So I got to get the hood up and look around. But the signal wire and the ground wire are ready. That wire is ready for the kick. But the hot wire is going to be coming in through here somewhere. So I'm going to have to be careful before I put the kick in. I'm going to have to get that hot wire laid somehow. So I'm going to work on that next. All right, I did some researching online, and this is what I come up with. So I popped the grommet out of the antenna. It's this one right here. And the hole's plenty big enough for both wires, but it's bare metal. So this was the grommet. It had like a center nipple that stuck out like that. So I cut out the center of it, made it larger, so that this wire, the power wire and the antenna wire would fit through there. And then when I put it back in the hole, it'll hold the gap tight. This is not a daily truck. It might get driven in the rain occasionally, but it's not something that I have to worry about that has to be sealed. But I can throw some silicone on here if I want to. But I think that's going to work. So I'm going to pop this back in that hole and then push the wire through from the back side to get it to the battery right here. And then we should be good. That's one of the things that was weighing on my mind, is how to get that to go through. And now that I see it, I feel like that's what I did on the old truck, because that's pretty convenient. So that's what we're going to do. All right, that worked out pretty good. I got the grommet back on there. You can see it right down here. Put the gap in the bottom, so if it does get splashed or whatever, it won't get in. I don't really think that's ever going to get wet from rain, unless I'm like forging water, which this thing sits on the ground. I'm not forging anything. So got myself a little extra here so I can get it all set up, and then I'll pull the slack out. So I'm going to go ahead and get the end cut, figure out where I'm going to mount my fuse, and get the wire cut to reach the battery, and keep moving forward. Getting excited. You ever have one of those times where you're just trying to figure out what to do with a certain situation, and then you realize you have the perfect tool for the job? I totally forgot that I had this rivet gun and these crush rivets, riv nuts, whatever you want to call them. So I found a nice screw that goes through my power fuse holder here. It's got a nice little hex head on it. found the rib nut that fits it. And I found a hole in the fender right here. Drill it out a little bit so the rib nut would fit. So I'm fixing to put that rib nut in there, and then we will be able to screw this right in that hole. It's going to be perfect. All right, that came out really good. Mounted up there, it's nice and solid. So I got the fuse and everything out, cut off a piece of the end of that wire, and I've got it over here on the workbench. Picked up these massive battery ends, so I'm going to put one of those on here. And then on the other end goes the fuse connector. I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted up. I'm going to have to find some really big pliers to clamp this thing. I may do it in the vise. I may put it in there and smash it. So we're working on that and get that knocked out, and then off to the next step. Okay, we got the end on the power there. Got it routed underneath and connected to the fuse holder. Next step's going to be put the fuse holder on the other end. Get that connected up, then I can pull the slack out through there. And that's really the hardest part, I think, is going to be of this install is this. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I'll have to pull the seat, the passenger seat out to mount the amp and do all of that stuff. But I'm going to kind of throw everything in the seat right in the floor right now, and that's it for tonight. But I'll pick back up on it in the morning. For you guys, it'll be just a second, so I'll see you then. All right, guys, back on the old truck, got a little more progress. I went ahead and finished the other end of the cord, or the cable there. Got it routed underneath the coolant reservoir. Threw the grommet down there. Got it just secured up, everything connected. I left the fuse out for now. You don't want to have that hot while you're trying to run it through the truck. You're going to get sparky. So we'll put the fuse in as the last step once everything's connected. So now I'm going to have to pull this seatbelt retractor out so I can get this seal off, and then we'll run the wires underneath that along the edge in behind the seat. What I'm going to do is loop them around and then run them back underneath this seat, and then cut a little hole in the carpet and pop them out once I figure out where I want the amp to be. Got to be mindful of that though, because if I add another amp later, say for like the kick panel speakers, I want to have enough room under here to put another little amp if I want to. So I don't want to put it like dead center and then not have the room for another amp. So I'm going to figure that out once I get the seat out. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this retractor and pull that seal. We'll run those wires, and then we can put this other kick panel in, get it wired up. We still got to do the wiring on the radio. I got to rewire the factory speakers like I mentioned earlier in the video. So we're going to work on that too. Just making progress. T45 Torx bit here. It was a little loose, but it handled business. Got the seat pulled out. The air ratchet is the best by far option for getting these seats out. It fits under there great. It's got enough power to knock it out. So now that the seat's out of the way, we're going to run the cables along here either behind this. You got to be careful where this stuff is mounted at, because you don't want it underneath that. So either up and behind this, or between here, and then around and under the seat. I'm going to place the amp real quick and kind of get an idea where it needs to be. I don't think it'll fit this way. It's going to have to go. I'm going to vacuum first. That's first. And then we'll fit the amp. All right. So, unfortunate turn of events. There's a large hump right here. I don't know what it is. It's soft-ish, but I don't know what's behind it. So moving the amp to that side is going to be a problem, because there's not going to be enough room for the wires to come out at the right angle to go in there without fighting. I didn't want it on this side because you're going to be able to see it through the opening in the seats, and that's just more incentive for someone to try to steal it if they can see it. I may try to figure out what's under this hump, if I can run the wires up and out right there. But I don't want it far forward because I don't want it sticking out the front of the seat. But this end needs to be available because it's got all the tuning parts. So I need to be easy access to that. So I guess I could do diagonal. Nah. Looks like it's going to be right in there. Something like that. Alright, got a general idea. I'm going to start running the wires. I think I'm going to run the power and the remote through this gap like I mentioned earlier. And then run the RCA signal cable up this way and bring it out right here. Because I also have the bass knob that I'm going to put inside the center console by the USB port we installed. And so I got to run that wire under there and pop it out over here too, because it plugs in right here. So I think I'm going to get a Sharpie, kind of mark some lines where I want the wires to come out. That way I know where to cut. Minimal slicing of the carpet, just enough for the wires. All right, I'm gonna get on it. All right, a little more progress. So I got the RCA cable, the signal cable ran underneath here. I'm going to pull this slack back into the dash. I'm not going to try to put it under the carpet or whatever. That's why it's all hanging out. I got the remote bass knob wire connected. Ran that up. It's going to go into the center console. Again, the slack's going to be in the center console, not under the carpet. Amp is, I put a couple of screws in. They just kind of biting into the carpet. They're not into the metal or anything. It just keeps it from moving around. Next step is going to be to cut off this hot wire and put the end on it that I have, and then connect the remote wire. And then on the ground wire, I'm just going to go straight to the seat bolt. So it won't go under the carpet or anything. It'll just be a short little ground wire that goes to the seat bolt. So that's the plan, at least. I've got to make sure I've got a ring that's big enough. I don't know if the ones I got for the battery are going to be big enough for seat bolts. Hopefully so, because they're very robust and nice. So that's what I want to use them for, but we'll see if they fit. But just an update on the progress. I had to pull the center console out again, but that's not too bad. Just 4 bolts. Keep moving forward. A little more progress. So I got this end wired up. Got the power wire cut off. Got the input on. Got the remote wire in. Made myself the ground wire that's going to go to that seat bolt there. So the amp is done except for the speaker wires, which are right here. Easy access. Once that's done, I'll be able to lay the seat back in place and bolt it back down. And then work on pulling the RCA back into there, finishing up, putting everything back together on this side, and then we can work on the radio. And I think that's the last step. Rewiring the radio to run the signal to the right speakers, connecting the remote wire and the RCAs, and putting all of that pile back together. And that's going to be the end of it. Probably a couple more hours, and we'll be able to fire this thing up. It's getting warm in here though. It's a nice sunny day. It's low 80s, but it's baking. I'm starting to get warm. So I'm gonna keep moving forward. Try to get this out of the way so I can go cool down. All right, seats all tucked back in, bolted down, ground cable reached. I pulled some of the slack out of this signal wire. I've got to tuck it in and pull the rest. And then we'll be able to put together this seal panel here, put in the kick, get it wired up, and then work on the radio. Coming down to the wire, almost done. All right, we got that tucked in, got the wires tucked away, got the trim panel back on, seatbelt remounted, looking clean. So now we're going to work on this wiring. So what I have in this bundle is all of the front. And then in this bundle is all of the rear. So what I'm going to do is cut these off And this is the output in. So I'm going to connect the new wires, those gray wires right there, to the new speakers to these fronts. Front left, front right. And then the wires that go to the current front speakers will be daisy chained and doubled up to the back speakers. It's going to put a pretty heavy ohm load on the factory speakers, well, the channel for the factory speakers, but I honestly think that's going to be a good thing, because they're not going to be able to handle a lot of power. So they will be, because of the higher ohm load, won't see as much power and possibly won't blow up. So that's the plan. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I'll rewire it. It's not hard to do. It's going to be tedious. It's going to take a little while, but I want to get that knocked out and then reconnect this spaghetti back to the radio, and we'll be done. All right, probably about an hour later, everything is wired up. So I use these trick little butt connectors like I did the first time around. They've got the solder joints built into them. You just heat up the shrink tubing and the solder joint melts. Perfect. But for the rears, because I don't know if I'm going to, well, the fronts that are tied to the rear, I don't know if that's how they're going to stay. I went ahead and just used T-taps on those four, so that I can easily undo that if I want to without losing a lot of wire. So I've got a bird's nest in here. Luckily this radio is not very deep. So I'm going to try it out real quick before I put all of that back together. Make sure everything turns on and works, and then make it pretty. So let's try it out. All right, I can't play the actual music because YouTube will get mad at me, but it does sound a lot better. There's much more mid-range, much more of the fill in the middle. I'll have to play with the EQ a little bit, but the channels do work. I can feed everything to the front, and the kick panels are the only ones playing. I can feed everything to the back, and the surrounds are playing, and it actually sounds really good because the surrounds are able to fill in, surround you just like they're supposed to, and then the kicks kind of give it that middle, the middle part, some thump and some bass. I don't have the fuse in the amp yet, so I'm going to go do that and clean this up, and then we'll try it out for real. All right, guys, that's going to finish this one up. I got everything buttoned up and looking pretty again. Took it around the block, played a little bit with the EQ. It's sounding amazing. It's sounding really good. It's got plenty of bass for this small cab. Those speakers are adding a lot more to the spoken word part of the songs, the lyrics and stuff. The mid bass is there finally. It's not so tinny and hollow anymore. And you're still able to hear the surround speakers. They still give you the highs. They still give you the ch-ch-ch. Everything's working great. I love it. It's perfect. So I'm going to leave it as it is. We're going to mark this one as done. All right, guys, that was it was a pretty big project. It took us a couple of weekends. It's a lot of work when you're doing it by yourself, but I did it. It's not that hard. It's just a lot of tedious process. So if you guys are interested in doing your own system, follow along in this video. I'm sure you can do it yourself. And altogether, if you include the radio and the factory speakers I've already changed out previously, I'm right around $2,000 total in all of the components, and then probably, I don't know, 10, 12 hours of work. But the system sounds amazing, and we have the satisfaction of knowing that we did it ourselves, and that's awesome. I'm going to finish this one off here. If you guys like the OBS content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I got some more coming. I'm also about to order a new subsystem for Eugene the Jeep, and we're going to change his out because the amp in his it's not working well. But for now, we're going to finish this one up and mark it off the list. You guys have a good one and rock on. Almost forgot, there's quite a few on this list. We did the kick panels, the sub, the amp. What else? I think that's it. 3 off the list.